Hello again and welcome to another Mage Tower guide. This time we're going to be talking about the Subtlety Rogue. So as always, we're going to start off with our consumables. We're going to need Flasks of the 7th Demon, Potions of Prolonged Power, Mastery Food of some sort, and Drums of Fury or the Mountain. Either one, they are the same thing. Moving on to talents, in the first row I went with Weapon Master as it is a passive and therefore just really easy to use. In the next tier, I went with Night Stalker, as this helps you get a little bit more damage out of your shadow dances. In the 45 tier, I went with Vigor. Now, it's generally considered that Deeper Stratagem is better in all situations, and I completely agree. However, my thought process here for using Vigor is that there is a lot of downtime in this challenge where you're not constantly up on a target, so you're able to take advantage of Vigor's larger energy well. However, either one of these is probably good. I just used Vigor for this situation. In the next tier, I went with Soothing Darkness, as the other two only provide damage reductions but don't give you anything back in healing, and seeing as you're having to take care of yourself, healing is going to be more important. In the following tier, I went with Tangled Shadow, as this allows you to get a larger slow from your Nightblade. This will be extremely important in the second part of the fight. In the 90 tier, I went with Alacrity. However, if I was going to do this challenge again, I'd probably go with Dark Shadow, as it just gives you a lot more burst damage, which is going to be really important in this. But Alacrity is really easy to keep at maximum stacks, so it is definitely a viable option if you want to go that route. And finally, in the last row, I went with Marked for Death, but I would go with Death from Above if I was going to do this again. Death from Above is not only the best damage talent in this tier, there's also a strat you can use that can really help you out, which I will go over a little bit in the actual kill. So those are the talents that I used in this challenge, so before we get into the kill, we're going to quickly run through the mechanics of this fight. So at the beginning of this encounter, we'll be facing off against Archmage Xylem. His mechanics can be broken down into 3 parts. The first part is the Frost phase, where he will have 3 abilities. The first ability is Frostbolt, which is just a small damaging ability that can be interrupted, but it does not slow you despite the name. His second ability is called Razor Ice. When he uses this, he will teleport to a different quadrant of the platform and you will be stunned for a short amount of time. During this time, you will be surrounded with Razor Ice, which will kill you pretty much instantly if you run into them. So you'll have to make sure that you find some way out of it, either by killing them or the method that I used, which I'll show in the video. And finally, his last ability is Comet Storm. He will always cast this simultaneously with Razor Ice and directly underneath you. This will do a lot of damage and just serves to pressure you to get out of the Razor Ice as quickly as you can. Once he reaches about 60% health, he will then enter the Intermission part of this fight. He will create multiple mirror images of himself all across the platform and hide himself amongst them. He does, however, show up on the minimap, so make sure you have that zoomed in so that you can find him quickly. About 2 to 3 seconds after the intermission starts, you will begin to take ticking damage just from being on the platform. And that is where the mirror images come in. They have only one ability, which is called Prismatic Shock, which if they finish this cast when you were near them, they will knock you back. However, if you can kill them, they will drop a protective barrier that will make you immune to the damage of the platform, as well as begin to heal you back up. I should also mention that the real Xylem has a 40-second cast that he's doing during this phase, and if he finishes it, you will just instantly wipe. However, 40 seconds is more than enough time to find him, and once you do, that will begin the third part, which is called the Arcane Phase. In this phase, he has 3 new abilities. The first one is called Arcane Barrage. Very similar to Frostbolt, it just deals damage, however, it does a significant amount more than Frostbolt did. His second ability is called Shadow Barrage. This is an uninterruptible channel that will summon these orbs to start moving in a direction depending on which way he's facing. Just make sure you're avoiding them, as they deal a lot of damage and will also knock you back if you get hit. And the last ability he has in this phase is called Draw Power. This needs to be interrupted immediately, as the longer he is able to channel this, the more stacks he will get of Draw Power, and each stack increases his damage to you by 5% that will persist for the rest of the fight. So make sure that this is your absolute priority to interrupt or stun as soon as it comes up. Once you've made it through all 3 parts of the fight once, it will essentially repeat, however the time you spend in each phase will be significantly shorter. Once Xylem reaches about 10% health, combat will end and he will be done with this encounter. At this point you can eat, switch gear, or change talents if you want to, but just as a reminder, I did not. And the last boss you'll have to deal with is Corrupting Shadows. Soon after he spawns in, he will begin to drop pools underneath him that will slowly grow in size. If you stand in these, you will take ticking damage and also be slowed, so you'll want to make sure you're never actually inside of these. Instead, try to stay on the edge of these as much as you can to help slow down the growth of these pools. After a while, he will begin to cast his one and only ability, Seed of Darkness. When this happens, do not interrupt him, but instead run away from him as far as you can, because when the debuff expires, you will then spawn 3 adds on yourself. These adds, which are called Darkness Within, will then begin to move back towards Corrupting Shadows. If they reach him, he will heal for a significant portion of his health, which will make it a lot harder to complete the challenge. Once you deal with the adds, you will be able to focus back on Corrupting Shadows and repeat the process. And that is pretty much it. So with all that being said, let's just go ahead and jump into the kill video. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is start off with my Shadow Blades and try to get in as much damage as I can. This will be the most uptime you're going to have on him consistently throughout the course of his involvement in the fight, so you just want to get in as much damage as you can right off the bat. For this first set of Razor Ice, what I'm going to do is pick one that's farthest to the edge, Shadow Step to it, and then run out. So this method did not work for one of my friends who tried to do this, and he could just not for the life of him get this to work. So if that's you, what I would highly suggest is to use Shadow Dance and Shuriken Storm spam to basically break through the ice that way. A little bit more conventional, but it takes a little bit more work. Another thing you can do is if you take Death from above, is you can actually time it so that he casts Razor Ice when you're in the air from Death from above, and when you come back down, you will actually teleport to where Xylem teleported. So you can completely skip the movement and getting out of the ice altogether, which is a good way to use it. However, it will not be up every single Razor Ice cast, so you will have to do that Shadow Dance Shuriken Storm spam in order to get out of each subsequent one. So just keep that in mind. If the Shadow Step version that I use works for you, more power to you. I think it's a lot easier to do. I had a really high success rate with it, which is why I was able to do it on my kill. It's not like I was just failing on it 90% of the time and managed to put together a good run like one time. It was working for me most of the time. So if that's you, more power to you, but see what works for you. Here's our first intermission, and what I'm going to do is just use my Cloak of Shadows and Sprint, and it completely just skipped the first phase, essentially, of the intermission. So here it's just dodging orbs and trying to get in as much damage onto Xylem as you can. So your positioning is going to be of the utmost importance. Try to stay somewhat close to him. His hitbox is actually fairly big, so you don't have to run away from him too much there. So as what just happened there is I immediately interrupted the cast of Draw Power. So make sure that you're on top of that as soon as it happens. Here I'm just going to use Feint. I don't know if it really works. It felt like I was taking less damage whenever I use Feint, even though it's not technically an AoE ability. There's another Draw Power that I interrupted. So you can try that if you want. It felt like there was no reason not to at least try, as my energy regeneration was faster than what Feint was taking. So here's another Shadow Barrage, and I'm just going to sidestep back and forth while still trying to keep as much uptime on Xylem as possible. And we're going to be entering another Frost phase, but before that we have to go through another intermission. So this time I'm going to have to do it legitimately. So I'm going to run as fast as I can through it as at the beginning, Shadow Step to one of the enemies, and then stay in this, and then try to time it out. So right after the Prismatic Shock, I'm going to Shadow Step to him, kill him, and then be on Xylem. A lot of stuff happened right there really quickly, but essentially what I was doing is Shadow Stepping to one, killing it, waiting, Shadow Stepping again, killing him, waiting, and then moving towards Xylem. So it's all about how quickly you can recognize where Xylem is, who to Shadow Step to, and then kill it in a way that you won't be getting hit with Prismatic Shock. So a lot of things that you have to identify really quickly. But once you can get the intermission phase, it won't be that much more difficult for the rest of the fight, in my opinion. So here, just finishing off the end of that Frost phase, and that's the end of Xylem. So here I'm just going to be preparing for Corrupting Shadows. So again, you are dropped from combat, so you can go back into stealth, and you can reopen the way that you started the encounter. So I'm going to stealth, I'm going to start off with Shadow Blades, and this time I'm also going to use my drums and potion if I had it, but I did not for this challenge. So what I'm going to do is pull them to the edge, so that way that I can just start moving around the edge of the room. But I am going to make a very fatal mistake here. What I should have done right now is move to his right, or my left, and be more on his side instead of directly behind him. So now what I'm going to have to do, just to start making distance from him, basically move around him just to start getting some distance from him, which results in me dropping these off not as far away as I wanted to. But what I'm going to do is Shuriken Storm spam, put the Night Blades debuff on them to slow them down, and then try to kill them off one at a time and pass the mark around. But because I wasn't able to get them far enough away, I'm actually not going to be able to kill this one. So you might be thinking that this is an automatic wipe, but personally what I found for this challenge is that sub-rogues have a ton of damage even at low item level, and you can overcome it. But you'll see how much life he recovers if one of them reaches him right here. Yeah, about 20% health. So basically my entire opener was wasted. So basically don't give up if this happens and keep practicing, and you'll see the difference it makes from me actually being in a position to run away from him farther and not have to run around him before moving away from him and dropping off the debuff. This time I'm in a much better position to do that. So you'll see I'm actually running away from him right away instead of having to do that little half semicircle around him before I actually make some distance away from him. But I'm going to handle it basically the same way. Shuriken Storm spam, apply Night Blades to all of them, and then moving my mark around and eviscerating. Also using Symbols of Death, as well as Shadow Dance, my artifact ability, and again just moving that mark around. And that time I had no problem dealing with him. So again, those extra steps really make a huge difference. So make sure that you're not standing directly behind him. Get to his side. Make sure that you're able to increase the distance between you and where you want to drop off the adds as quickly as you can, and don't cheat how much room that you actually have. So I've got a lot of damage to make up here, so I want to make sure that I'm doing as much damage to him as possible, but make sure I'm still saving some cooldowns for the adds as well. As you can see, I basically have another Shadow Dance cast ready, but since I'm not that great at this the spec, I wasn't able to fit it in there, but fortunately I didn't really need it. I've got these adds to deal with real quick before I can finish off Corrupting Shadows. So again, Shuriken Storm spam, applying Night Blade to all three of them, marking one of them and eviscerate spam using my Shadow Dance, and trying to get in as much damage as I can. And this time, able to kill these quite cleanly, and now it's just Corrupting Shadows. So I can't survive another set of adds, so I have to kill him now before his final set of adds come out, which would result in a wipe. So again, just trying to get in as much damage as I can. And it will essentially be really close. So you're going to get to see something that you don't normally see with these kind of challenges, which is his Enrage. He actually does have an Enrage once you get to about the end of the room, where he will start doing a lot more damage right there. So what I'm going to do is just use up the rest of this space. I'm going to go ahead and get in on him here. I'm going to use Cloak of Shadows one more time, which allows me to stand in the darkness without taking damage, and I'm just barely able to kill him. So you can recover, but you shouldn't have to do it that way or want to do it that way. You should learn from my mistake and make sure that you're not positioning yourself behind the boss when Seed of Darkness comes out. Make sure you're at his side so you can immediately start making distance from him and get those adds dropped off as far away as you can from the boss. That way you can kill them quickly and have more room to do that, which will make it a lot easier. So yeah, that's pretty much it that I have for this guide, so I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope it was helpful. Let me know what you think down in the comments below, and I will see you guys in the next video.